In the 1960s, Century 21 Publishing and City magazines published several popular comics. Titles like TV21, Lady Penelope, and even something called Joe 90 Top Secret, but that sounds a bit rubbish.
That sounds great.
Terrible thing. But amongst the lesser-known titles was a short-lived comic named Solo, which was launched in February 1967. As the name might suggest, Solo was named after one of the characters from The Man from U.N.C.L.E., which was one of the comic strips that it featured. That was obviously Napoleon Solo. Played on television by the future star of The Protectors, Robert Vaughn. Mostly the other strips were aimed at younger readership than that of TV21. There were lots of Disney strips and animal stories and so on, but notably, no Anderson strips.
Oh, right.
However, issue 16 carried a feature about a plane that had disappeared over the Atlantic, only to land, apparently unharmed, in New York a few hours later. Over the next few weeks, there were similar stories, along with vague reports about some kind of mysterious force threatening our existence.
Right.
This was the start of a gradual overhaul of the comic, which was fully redesigned with issue 19 in June 1967, as the failing Solo comic was now being used as a promotional tool for the upcoming series, Captain Scarlet and the Mysterons.
Aha!
The cover now proudly declared itself Solo Anti-Mysteron Edition, and sported a TV21-esque tabloid front page reporting on the latest Mysteron attack against present-day Earth.
Very good.
So although it carried several comic strips based on TV shows, as well as the strips named The Mark of the Mysterons, featuring reporter John Marsh investigating all the strange goings-on, the revamped Solo also featured various articles heavily promoting the Mysteron threat. You don't really want to be promoting the Mysteron threat, do you? Anyway, photos of real-life disasters were declared the work of the Mysterons and given such ominous headings as "The storm is gathering,"
wow.
"This is more than just another warning, it's a call to arms," and "Again we say fight." And various letters from readers who suspected that the Mysterons might have taken over local bus drivers or lollipop ladies.
It could happen, yeah. A slightly more sedate episode, I would think, of Captain Scarlet.
Well, absolutely, but this was part of the fun, wasn't it, of the Mysterons? That you imagine that, these people your teachers, etc., might be taken over. Anyway, this all started in June of 1967, promoting a series that wouldn't launch until September 67, quite a long time to wait when you were a kid. So, having started as a random assortment of TV and film-related strips with a fairly light-hearted tone, the Solo comic had taken an abrupt shift towards hard paranoia, really, and spent 3.5 months ordering its confused young readers to join the fight against a fictional body-snatching alien menace that was supposedly infiltrating the highest levels of society, when those readers were probably just hoping for some comics about Donald Duck and Goofy. As the weeks went by, more and more photos of Anderson models and puppets would be featured on the front page, and in issue 23, the comic did finally admit that all this alien carnage was indeed fictional, although it didn't stop them from publishing more than one issue featuring a photo of a real-life human being with the words "assassinated" or "murdered" on the cover.
Crikey!
Wouldn't happen now, would it?
No.
Gosh.
Wow.
The final issue of Solo was published 2 weeks before the first broadcast of Captain Scarlet, and the comic was then merged into TV Tornado, which would feature a comic strip based on the genocidal adventures of the Mysterons themselves, similar to TV21's Dalek strip. Today, Solo is mostly remembered as an interesting experiment to promote Captain Scarlet, but because the comic didn't start out that way, there were a few anomalies, such as why were the Mysterons attacking Earth in 1967, considering they wouldn't declare war until 2068? Hopefully, any Solo readers who would have been brave enough to stick with the comic until the first broadcast of Scarlet were relieved to eventually discover that the Mysterons weren't actually real, just characters in a television show, although quite a few had probably been scared off long before that point.
Yeah, that's right. Gosh.
What a bizarre experiment, though. I mean, to do it that way, because part of the success of TV21 was the kind of tabloid future newspaper for kids, but kind of written in an adult way. I get that appeal. But to start saying, a current contemporary call to arms and real tragedies happening.
That's extraordinary.
It's, goodness me. Feels a bit tasteless, doesn't it?
Yes, and I'd never really considered it before. Perhaps the fact that, particularly Captain Scarlet, which as we know was sort of darker in tone, perhaps the fact that that was a puppet series enabled the younger viewer, to maintain a bit of distance, perhaps. But having that human figure on the cover with, murdered or assassinated, that makes it too real, doesn't it? Perhaps, potentially. People often talk about, wouldn't a live-action version of Captain Scarlet be great? Perhaps it would, but perhaps not for kids.
Yeah.
Too dark?
I think in the early screenings of the first couple of episodes, they were really worried that the Mysterons were too terrifying anyway. So to bring it into the real world in that way, on the one hand, fun to joke that your French teacher was a Mysteron, ha 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 ha.
Yes,
but then the real world angle.
I think they'd probably fall foul of a few regulations these days.
I think. Can you imagine what Mary Whitehouse would have had to say about that?
Well, yeah, that's right. Yeah, slightly before her time, wasn't it? That's right, but 10 years later.
Yeah, exactly, that's what I mean, but if it had happened... Anyway, a fascinating marketing idea, and they were very good at introducing TV shows and kind of getting the audience warmed up for them, so very cool in a way. Keith Shackleton and the team behind the publishing side, Alan Fennell and those guys were doing amazing work, but I feel like Solo was a bit of a miss in that respect.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Podsterons, did you read the original Solo comic? Have you got copies now? What do you think? We'd love to hear your thoughts. podcast@gerryanderson.com, or if you're watching the FabFacts video, comment below the video, and we may respond to your comments and questions next week.